Hello, everybody. Welcome in. We'll give a couple more seconds to have people trickle in, but welcome to KOSU's live One Small Step event. It's exciting. I'm Caitlin Mills, Special Projects Reporter here for KOSU, and I'm a co-facilitator for the One Small Step project here in Oklahoma. And I still have a little bit of music I guess I can play while we're waiting. Just a couple more seconds. Oh, I think it actually ended. Ooh. 15 minutes of music and it wasn't long enough.
So Kaylee introduced herself. And I'm Matthew Viriapa, production assistant for KOSU and another one of the facilitators for One Small Step this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're glad that everybody's joining us. Before we begin, I want to encourage everyone to type into the Zoom chat your first name and where you're watching this event from. And I'll also type that real quick so people who are trickling in know to do that too.
Yeah, so while you guys are doing that, I'm just going to explain what we're going to be doing tonight. Tonight, we're just going to be showing you some behind the scenes of how we've been doing One Small Step this year, how we've been pairing people off for conversations, how we've been producing these, and finally at the end, what these pieces sound like. Also, if you have any questions, please send them. We'll be having a Q&A portion at the end of the night, and we'll be trying to answer questions then and kind of throughout the entire event.
So we'll go ahead and get started. Oh, hey, everybody. Oh, they're all coming in. Yeah, just a reminder to just type your first name and where you're watching from. Okay, so we have a few audio pieces we're going to play for you, some participant post conversations as well, and an interview with StoryCorps' very own Jacqueline Van Meter. And that one's segmented up and we'll play it throughout the night. But first, we want to show you a video of the community we've been a part of thanks to StoryCorps' One Small Step project. So we're going to play that.
What made you want to do this interview today?
Seems to me like we live in a time that people don't listen as well as perhaps they used to.
I live in a tiny village where there are about 50 or 60 people. I just kind of thought it'd be fun to see what people outside of the village sound like.
Hola, mi nombre es Diego Sarazúa. Nos encontramos en Nevada.
I live in Bakersfield, California.
And we're in beautiful Amarillo, Texas.
I get a lot of joy out of just conversations with people.
Well, you know what? I enjoy talking to people too. That's a real Oklahoma thing, isn't it?
I think it is.
Could you briefly describe in your own words your personal political values?
That's a loaded question, huh?
Yeah.
I would describe myself as a fiscally conservative person.
I'm definitely more liberal leaning.
I don't know. I don't even know if conservative means what conservative used to mean. I'm not even sure liberal means what it used to mean.
If we didn't know each other and I met you on the road and you had a flat tire and I'm going to help you, I have no care what your politics are.
Exactly. That's Kansas.
In Alaska, sometimes you got to humble yourself and say, hey, what's your perspective on this? Can you help me out?
We depend on one another up here.
Yeah.
I want to believe that people who maybe have different points of view still have the same end goals in life and can talk about things without being upset with each other. Was I who you expected me to be?
Yes and no. Like, you're more human than the archetype in my head, obviously.
Well, I'm glad.
Qué bonita tu historia. Gracias por todo eso.
I just really enjoyed this conversation, actually. So, I mean,
I have too.
This has been a great conversation. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, Dan, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, Nick, if you find yourself planning to be in the St. Albans area, give me a shout. Be glad to show you my orchards.
That would be awesome.
I am honored to have met you.
I will treasure this friendship. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so just in case you guys didn't catch it, There were 6 stations in this collaboration this year. I'm seeing some of the people who work at some of the other stations here tonight. So just to shout them out, there was Alaska Public Media in Anchorage, High Plains Public Radio in Garden City, Kansas, and Amarillo, Texas, KUNR in Reno, Nevada, Valley Public Media in Clovis, California, and Vermont Public Radio in Colchester, Vermont, and us here in Oklahoma.
So as part of the 6 stations that's been hosting One Small Step conversations, we should take it back to when we first applied. So I remember back at the start of the year, got a call from our boss, Rachel Hubbard, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to maybe sign up for this One Small Step project?" And I was like, "It's StoryCorps, yeah, obviously." And whenever we got the call that we had got it, I remember lots of squealing and just feeling really ready to get started. Matt, what did you think whenever I first told you about the project?
I wasn't sure what to think because I didn't know too much about it. I was really excited to work with StoryCorps because we've done a lot of stuff with them before, and it's always been really great. But yeah, I couldn't have imagined what this project ended up being at the beginning.
Yeah, same. So soon after approval, Matt and I had trainings with StoryCorps that taught us how to pair people together, how to facilitate these conversations, how to archive the audio for StoryCorps, and after the fact as well. So I just want to share a portion of our interview with Jacqueline Van Meter, radio relations manager for StoryCorps for the One Small Step program, that explains the origin of the project and how our station is tied to facilitating these conversations. Also, those are repeating, and I don't know why, so sorry in advance.
So we're joined today by a very special StoryCorps guest. Could you please introduce yourself for the audience?
Sure. Thanks, Kaylee. Thanks, Matt. My name is Jacqueline Van Meter, and I am the radio relations manager at StoryCorps for the One Small Step program.
Very good. All right. So we've kind of talked about it in the start of this, but could you overview the origin of One Small Step? How did it all begin?
Sure. So StoryCorps really has been around for, 18 years now. And the original premise was just, how can we, as an organization that's got kind of recording equipment and good intentions, go out into the world and give everyday Americans the opportunities to interview one another. Mostly the idea was bring 2 people together who you want to celebrate each other, their loved ones, friends, family, etc. And we're kind of inviting them to take the opportunity to have a conversation with one another, to learn about their lives and document it and archive it at the Library of Congress. So over many years, these conversations have been really intimate. They've been really poignant. They've been really connecting. And it was against that backdrop that, we kind of entered into 2016, and our organization and our founder in particular, Dave Isay, took a look around at all of the divisiveness and the polarization that just seemed to become more and more amplified as the days went by. And like so many other organizations and individuals across America, the question was, well, what do we do about it? What resources and options, and value can we bring to this situation to try to help push against that? And so that's kind of how One Small Step was born. We have this model of bringing people together for conversation who love each other and want to celebrate each other. How could we use that model to bring people who don't necessarily feel that way about each other, or heck, are even strangers to one another, who think they could never feel that way about one another, and give them the opportunity to have sort of a structured conversation, not to sort of duke out politics, but just like any other StoryCorps conversation, to understand one another's lives and explore their stories a little bit and see if that model could move the needle in terms of helping us to connect to one another as humans and not feel so divided.
I want to clear up also people who have questions about how our station and StoryCorps collaborate on this project. Could you talk about the relationships between the two?
Yeah, I'd love to. So StoryCorps, has been exploring this new project, One Small Step. We kind of launched it in a pilot phase in 2017, and we've been evolving it since then. But one of the programs that I'm excited to be involved in is this One Small Step Communities program. And the idea is that StoryCorps would collaborate really closely for about a year at a time with public radio stations like KOSU and work with your staff to kind of train you up on how to facilitate this one small step conversation model, so that you could be offering this experience to your community members kind of over an extended period of time, right? So we ask, each year we ask lots of stations to apply for the program and tell us how they would want to carry out work like this in their community and why they'd be well suited to do it. And from the applications we get, we try to assemble, an interesting cohort that gives us kind of strongholds in different parts of the country, connections and relationship building opportunities with all different kinds of communities. And we were really excited to work with KOSU. StoryCorps has kind of a long relationship with you guys. We've always done such incredible collaborations together. And we were just really compelled by how much of a community connector KOSU is and how well positioned you were to really reach out into all different aspects of the Oklahoma City and beyond community to bring people together. So we trained you guys up along with 5 other stations this year, earlier in the summer. And the goal was that together we would support you guys in recording about 25 conversations between the time we launched this past summer and the end of the year.
And what a wild ride has it been.
No kidding.
Yeah, so since we started back in June, we've had over 110 people sign up for One Small Step. And so far, we've been able to have 14 conversations. And we kind of just want to show you what they've been sounding like so far.
I heard about this on NPR, and I want to believe that people who maybe have different points of view still have the same end goals in life and can talk about things without being upset with each other.
I wanted to share a quote, and that was, you can't work with people you don't trust, and you can't trust people you don't know.
I am very much concerned for how we move forward as a society. I worry that the divide between us will be more important than the bonds that keep us together.
I think the most influential person was my big sister, Andy. And she taught me, personal responsibility, that there's nobody else, to look for, that you have to be responsible for yourself, take care of yourself. And then she also influenced my political beliefs a lot and really just taught me that it's okay to go against the grain. It's okay to think for yourself and have ideas that might not be mainstream if you believe in them. Who's been the most influential person in your life? What did they teach you?
My dad in particular really, really gave me the direction that I needed in life. I knew from very, very young I wanted to be a veterinarian. So he was the one that actually told me, like in the car, I think we were in the Sonic drive-thru or something like that. And he was like, so what's your plan? Because we're not going to be paying for it. And so he gave me that lead time. And so that's what actually led me to the Air Guard. And he had been in the Air Guard since he was 17 years old. He just taught me a lot of those principles about working from a young age, like having that self-drive from a young age.
I really respect your parents. I feel like those are really important lessons. And I think it's clear by talking to you and the school you've gone to and the adventures you've encountered that you took that to heart and ran with it. So good on them.
If somebody approaches me and wants to talk to me about politics, other than my daughter, because I want to love my daughter and I don't want us to be at odds, so I just avoid it. Her husband and I will go back and forth and discuss things, but my daughter and I are both hot-blooded, so it's best I just leave it alone because I'm not going to make a difference and I want to enjoy my life with her.
See, I feel like I'm closer to my mom now than I was before, and it's because we actually have those discussions. Like we absolutely could not do it before, but yeah. I feel like maybe I'm older.
My daughter is my life, so there's no question on that. I sold my boat, my truck, my whole way of life and moved here. I hope that sometime in the future that I could have the relationship to talk politics like you do with your mother. That would be wonderful.
I bet you guys could. I bet you could if that was like a goal. I bet you can do it. And I hope that you do.
So Matt, folks just heard an audio montage of a few of the conversations we've had in Oklahoma so far. And I wanted to take it back to pairings and what we experienced during our first couple conversations. What were some of your biggest takeaways?
Just kind of, you never know what people end up talking about with each other when they're finally like in the room. Um, we know a few things about the people when you guys sign up. You fill out a survey that provides some information about who you are, but um, there are things that people kind of discover about one another um, that you don't really kind of expect, or um, they find commonalities that you didn't even know about. And I think that is really at the heart of this project.
Yeah. I definitely think we were very careful with our first couple conversations because we were new to everything. We were new to facilitating and pairing and all of it. And I remember the very first pairing we did, they were both higher ed educators. One of them worked for a Christian university while the other one was retired from one of our 4 major universities here in the state. One taught science, the other math, but they were different politically and religiously.
Yeah, Nick and Karen, they were our very first conversation in Oklahoma. So the conversation, each one will last about 50 minutes. But for this, we just decided to single out their conversation about, their differences in faith.
The thing that is surprising is having someone come and be honest that they are agnostic. Like that's not as common, at least in the circles I run around in out in the world.
I have to give my mom an incredible amount of credit here. In the small farming community I grew up in, I knew people that were not of different religious beliefs so much as just different denominations. So I was just curious, and I asked if I could go to the Catholic Church and the Presbyterian Church and the Methodist Church, and she let me do it. The way I really came to be agnostic is one of the things I saw is that in all of these groups was that there was a central core for all of these that had to do with, treating people decently. The things that I didn't like in all of them was the idea that in order for people to treat each other decently, there had to be some punishment waiting in the wings. We don't really need any kind of a supernatural explanation for the things that do go on in the world.
I can definitely respect that. I've come to realize now, in reflecting on my own childhood, that I was influenced by strains of evangelical American Christianity in my childhood. And there was a sense there where some of them are scared of people who just are not Christian or are anything except Protestant, because they feel like it's just a threat if anyone believes differently than they do. I really haven't felt that kind of fear. The longer I've been a Christian, the more I'm convinced that God is not limited. God is not limited, which means that God can bring anyone to faith in Christ, and we just don't know the timing of it. It's kind of like doing things like this. When you listen to people, that's when you can figure out whether you're part of that place where that person can come to faith or not. And if not, then just move on. It's not, it doesn't mean you can't continue the friendship or the relationship. It just means that it's just not the right time or the right place, right person.
Yeah. Matt, what did you think whenever we edited this down this way about their interaction?
Yeah, so when this was like like I said, the very first conversation that we did, and I wasn't sure like what to expect. But as we did it and like listening to it afterwards, you saw like how gentle they were with each other.
Yeah.
Snippet really reflects like how the entire conversation went.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like they gave each other during the whole conversation, they gave each other like those moments where they could just talk and it was okay to just explain, about their lives, about their experiences, without fear that it was going to be, some sort of backlash or anything to anything that they had to say. And I think that they did a really good job, specifically with this topic. You can kind of get that sense that, he's letting her, complete her thoughts, even though we know he disagrees. And I think he did a really good job.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where, yeah, it certainly wasn't something that we expected them to talk about. At least I didn't. Just based on how we paired them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now that we've listened to a snippet of like that 50 minutes, we're gonna kind of go through how that 50 minutes is actually structured for these conversations in order for it to be as productive and smooth and enjoyable as the clip that you just heard.
Yeah. So we want to do like we want to do like a conversation breakdown. And I think the example we want to use in this portion is with participants Kelly and Carol. Every productive conversation comes with preparation. So after the participants are vetted and paired, they will get a participant packet sent to them that will help. It walks them through the process of the conversation, and it's where they learn about ground rules for the conversation and other tools and starter questions. So it's really important to send that to them. Ooh, I'm sorry. So before the recording begins, we welcome them and lay down these ground rules that you can see on this slide here. Matt, I want you to help me out so people that are here can see how it works before the recording starts, what they do, where participants take turns reading these out loud to each other. So I'll start with number 1. Refrain from using any harmful or derogatory language.
Yeah, and the next rule is share the time equally.
Don't interrupt each other, which is hard sometimes with internet connectivity.
Don't make assumptions about your conversation partner or their beliefs.
Speak for yourself about your own experiences.
And respect each other's differences. Do not try to persuade each other.
And yeah, Matt and I, we've actually started adding this 7th rule, which is be curious, because, to have like a really engaging conversation, you should actively listen to that person. And then if anything sparks your curiosity, ask them about it. Be curious. So we like to add that after they read those. So back to Kelly and Carol. They had many instances of connection in their conversation. Just like we noticed it, and whenever we were pairing them, obviously, because when you fill it out, you fill out hobbies and interests and everything. But I was really honestly surprised about how many little coincidences just kept popping up in their conversation. So like we mentioned, the goal is to pair people who are politically different, which they were. But it's important to note that in these conversations, the heart of it is storytelling. So while some participants want or feel the need to talk about specific political issues, others just want to connect over shared humanity, which is what Kelly and Carol did initially. So we have a clip where they connected over motherhood and lessons that they've learned from children.
Tell me about your toddler.
Okay. Of course, this is my opinion. I might be a little biased towards her, but she's amazing. She's 3.5 years old, and she is kind and she is patient. She's funny. Oh my goodness. She started showing a sense of humor before she was 2 years old. She's just a really neat human. She is my lovely little human. And I appreciate the fact that she's very patient with me. It's like when she was born, she knew I have an older mom, so I'm going to have to be a little more patient, but my mom's older, so she's going to be a little more patient with me. So it was like this unspoken understanding from the day she was born, and she's spectacular.
How cool. That is so cool. And one of the questions that we talked about was how who's influenced your life. And as a person that has 2 kids and has taught kids from kindergarten through high school for 34 years, I learned the most from the little ones. They are honest, they're thoughtful, and they're just not afraid to blurt it out. They don't have that filter yet. And so I just learned so much from those kids.
It's like pure genuineness and authenticity.
Yeah.
And that's just something that I can honestly just bathe in. It provides such a warmth to be around someone who is candid, and someone that can express love without concern whether or not it will be reciprocated. People say it changes your life when you have a child, and those words just aren't enough. I mean, it's just not enough. As you know, 2 times over.
You're exactly right.
I love that little laugh at the end. So this portion of the conversation, I think is important to note, took place in the middle of the 50-minute conversation. So it was long after their introductions to each other. And I feel like out of the 14 that we've done, that's really when a lot of them tend to open up. And people, you can kind of get the sense that they are getting more comfortable with each other. And as facilitators, it is sort of hard because, if they haven't talked about politics at that moment, it's hard for us to kind of figure out, okay, when do I step in? Do I interrupt them? Because they look like they're having a good time. Matt, did you feel like that was an experience you've had?
Yeah, because it's kind of a weird dual role that we have to play where, we're going to be in the room for these conversations, but we're trying to be as non-intrusive as possible. But we also need to, perform our role as facilitator and try and keep things on like a certain track and not get too off tangent.
Right. Yeah. But for Kelly and Carol, they did talk about politics. It just happened to be at the very end of their conversation because they were having such a good time up until like the end. And I was like, hey guys, let's talk about our political values. And they're like, okay. So it was towards the end. And so we have a clip from that.
Tell me about.
I am an issues person. I'm not so much a party person. It just depends on who it is that's reflecting my core values. But ultimately, when I'm standing in that voting booth, it's going to be about the person that's running for office.
Okay.
And I don't care what letters behind their name.
Are you more interested? Because I've been struggling with this too. I'm kind of an issues person as well. When I'm looking at the person, what about their character and integrity?
Undoubtedly, it's a mitigating factor. If it's a matter of personal indiscretion between the politician and their partner, that has nothing to do with me. I don't care. Unless, you're trying to cover it up. I would say if somebody is a known liar, then no, I can't trust what they're saying. I mean, even if they're saying what I want to hear, it's still coming from an untrustworthy source. But if you've made a mistake before in your life, that's fine. Who hasn't made a mistake? Who are you now? And can we believe you?
I've never been a single issue voter about things. And so there are issues that rise up to the top more than others. But
yes.
I wasn't independent for a long time, but I had to get a little pragmatic and practical about it. After 2018, I thought, okay, what can I do? Because obviously things need to change here.
Right.
And so I decided to become a precinct worker, be trained to be a precinct worker. And so I went in and spent a whole day, did all this stuff. And one of the interesting things I learned was that in order to be a judge or a clerk, you have to be registered as a Republican or a Democrat. You have to be. You can't be an independent and work those jobs. So I had to register. And so when I was at the voting thing, I said, so what do you need me to be? Because I really don't care. Just tell me what you need me to be so that I can work for you. And so that's what we did.
I really do appreciate your pragmatic nature, Carol. I sincerely, I really do.
And I want to make a quick note because I did check with the Oklahoma State Election Board about what Carol says. They have since updated since she became a precinct worker in 2018. So they do have to have a Republican and a Democrat, but the third person can be any recognized party in our state. So there's an update there. Woo.
Doing that.
Yeah. So just like I said before we played that clip, that happened at the very end of the conversation. So that just goes to show for some people, like it takes a minute to get political, which I think is pretty normal when you're talking to a stranger, but and it's okay if it takes that long, you know. So I just wanted to remind people that was that.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and so we've been able actually to touch base with them, both Kelly and Carol, and so we have post-conversation interviews, and I think the first one that we're gonna hear from is Carol.
Let's see, it was a while back. I can honestly say it was just, my biggest takeaway was that wasn't hard. It was so cool to meet somebody new. And that even, differences really don't matter because there's something that you can find with somebody else that you have in common. And sometimes it's something incredibly off the wall that's like, wow, where did that come from? Like in our conversation, that Mississippi connection and also the disability connection, because I have a friend that's disabled. So it was just such a cool thing. And I've been telling my friends about it and saying, I was so happy to have that opportunity to be able to do that because it was just amazing.
That kind of ties into the next question. Do you feel like there were lessons that you learned during the conversation? Whether it was like a personal lesson or something like you thought that it kind of confirmed?
Yeah, I think in just my personal life with other people, I have a lot of family members that think different. And so, I've dealt with that for a while, but that's family, and family is a little different dealing with family. And so going with a complete stranger and learning that, yeah, I do have a lot in common with people, no matter what. We can always find that common bond. Even a stranger, I can find a common bond with. And so it confirmed that. It confirmed that that's a good thing, to listen, to be open, and to accept people for where they're at right now. And I don't have to change your mind.
Yeah. Do you feel like doing this project made a difference? That's like one question that we think about here, is like, it sounds like such a big thing when you talk about political division. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it made a difference to talk to someone who was different from you?
Like a difference for me?
Whether personally or in the grand scheme of things.
Either one. Okay. Well, it's hard when you think about the grand scheme of things, because the title is One Small Step, and it is a small step, and you don't think about, but in order to get anywhere, you got to take the steps. And most of the time to accomplish something, you don't accomplish something with a giant leap. You accomplish something with a small step, and then another one, and another one, and another one. So I think this program here has done, at least for the people that have been involved, a great thing. I think for most of us, we've said, wow, this is very cool. I liked it. It was a great experience. It makes me not afraid to be able to talk to other people sometimes. It gives me a little more power and encouragement, or empowerment, I guess is the word, to say, yeah, I can talk to other people. I'm okay with this. I can come out of a conversation and feel just fine. And again, I don't have to be right. I don't have to prove you wrong. I don't have to convince you of anything. We can just talk, and that's okay. That's okay. And so, I think in the end, yeah, I think it's going to make a big difference, and because it'll multiply. I mean, I feel better about talking to somebody else. I'm willing to talk to somebody else. Kelly was probably willing to talk to somebody else, and then they're going to talk to other people, and they're going to talk to other people. And then it's just going to be very, very cool. We might not see it, but I think we can know that it's going to happen. I think I would encourage them to not be afraid. I guess that's the biggest thing, but also just, you know, when you're talking to somebody that's different, you have to take that step back and not make it all about you. You have to realize that it is not all about me all the time. And so to just not be afraid to step out of their comfort zone a little bit and to ask the questions. And then, you know, if something pops up that like just totally blows the socks off of them, like sometimes when I was teaching and kids would come up and tell me stuff and it's like, holy cow, where did that come from? How am I going to respond? To realize it's not about me. Take a deep breath. You don't have to respond. You can nod your head and move on. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So just it's okay. It's a good thing. And don't be scared because it'll be okay in the end.
Well, thank you, Carol, for doing this program. We really appreciated you signing up and also making the time to do it. So thank you very much.
Oh, I am happy to do it and honored. I really feel like it was a special thing to be asked and to be able to do it. It was very cool. Thanks.
So Matt, what was like your takeaway from this post-conversation interview with Carol that she said about her experience?
Yeah, you know, I was just really curious about what impact like just 50 minutes of conversation could really have. You know, it had been a couple weeks since we talked to her. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that, you know, even after a couple weeks, it still like lingered and really seemed like it made an impact.
Yeah. I really liked what she said about it multiplying, like opening yourself up enough to where, you know, you're open to having the experience, but then also, you know, wanting to do it again and again. And then I thought that was a really beautiful thing to say. So yeah. All right. And we also had a post-conversation interview with Kelly as well.
It was wonderful. I greatly enjoyed it. It yielded some unexpected results, and it was a warm experience. It was very genuine and authentic, and I felt like there was real communication to be had and to be given and to be received all.
And what was your biggest challenge from the conversation, whether it was like, you know, before it even happened or during or even after?
Probably the anticipation leading up to it was the biggest hurdle. What we're speaking of is directly speaking to somebody you know doesn't agree with you. Oftentimes that will inspire a little bit of reticent nature. I personally really enjoy it. I feel like when I speak to somebody who thinks differently than I do, it helps me to expand my world. And when my world expands, then the people that I love and I care for, their world expands.
Was it leading up to it, you were nervous to do it or what exactly was it?
I was nervous. I apologize. I didn't completely answer that. I was nervous leading up to it, but I believe it was really more anticipation and excitement than it was nerves. And then the outcome, who I was paired with, just the unlikeliness of having so much in common, even though we have some different points of view. It was rewarding, and it made me feel like this was a good step to take, and a purposeful step to take.
I think that leads into the next question. What was a big takeaway for you after having the conversation?
Not to get so worked up, not to be so anxious or anticipate so much, to remember that all of us are so much more alike than we are different. The things that unify us are much more important than the things that divide us as a whole, as a species on this planet. We really do need to recognize that we are all interlinked.
One thing that was really interesting about your conversation was how many things that had connections between you both. You had a Mississippi connection.
Yes.
Both of your mothers grew up in Ardmore.
It was just one thing after another. It was very uncanny. And it was almost a nod from the universe that this was a good step for both Carol and I to take and to meet each other, and that we have support to offer each other. Take the opportunity to have difficult conversations. Easy conversations are easy conversations. Difficult conversations really can yield something more for both individuals having the conversation. And as I stated earlier, that's our opportunity for growth. That's our opportunity to enlarge the world around us and create a better texture or fabric of understanding for our community and our society at whole.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I would do would be to suggest that they lay down ground rules, much like here with One Small Step. And I feel like those are absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Not only going through those rules and reading them, does that help to put you into that mindset, but it helps to create healthy boundaries. And it does seem that healthy boundaries are a real struggle for us in this country right now.
Yeah, I think it's important to go through those ground rules before the conversation. I agree.
Absolutely. And it helps to depersonalize too.
Yeah.
I mean, we all come forward and owning what we feel. And that is a personal thing for us. But there is an ability that we each have to compartmentalize that enough to be able to have an intelligent, empathetic conversation.
So I think my biggest takeaway after talking to Kelly was like, she felt that everything about this was intentional, from the ground rules to prepping, and I agree with her. I think like if you want to have a conversation like this, even if it's with, a loved one, having those parameters to kind of keep, to make sure it'll be productive and to move forward. And I think that was a really important point. Matt, did you have any other takeaways from her interview?
Yeah, I just like how she pointed out how rare it is to have these conversations sometimes in your everyday life. So yeah, this project has been a really good opportunity, I think, for a lot of people to, have these conversations in a way that's, really purposeful, like you said, and intentional, with its design and format. So you kind of heard how these conversations play out using, One Small Step. We asked Jacqueline about how they designed One Small Step in order to make sure that these conversations are both successful and, good experiences for everyone involved.
Oh, sorry, guys.
So there's a lot of work that goes into preparing the participants. As you guys know, you've been doing that hard work on the ground in Oklahoma City. Lots of work that goes into preparing participants. So you'll provide everyone who is selected for a conversation a participant packet that really goes over what is the premise of this conversation, what are the standard questions that every conversation begins with, what are the ground rules, really basic things, but it's just better to state that stuff outright. Don't interrupt each other. Don't try to persuade each other. Don't use any derogatory language. Just be aware of the energy that you're bringing into the space, right? So all of those resources are sort of part of expectation setting and demystifying the process so that when participants come to the table and they're ready to have a conversation with someone who's a stranger and they don't know how it's going to go, and all indicators seem to suggest like, oh, we're not going to agree on things that could be tense. We want to give them every resource available to help them feel prepared so that they can make the most of their time together.
Yeah, one thing, and I want Matt to chime in on this for any of his observations, things that we hear sort of before the recording begins, or people were nervous, coming in, but now they're here and they can see somebody. Matt, do you have any other observations before like the recording begins or ends that you've noticed that's kind of singular to, hosting these conversations?
Yeah, I think there's just like, there's a moment where everyone's just kind of feeling each other out. But once they kind of like get through that, it really like opens up and people really make it their own. And the amount of times that I've had where people are wanting to exchange like contact information afterwards because they want to continue like the dialogue has been really, really nice to hear.
Hmm.
Yeah, Kaylee, I'm thinking about what Matt said, and there is that period of people feeling each other out for sure. Like inevitably, they're strangers, right?
Mhm.
I mentioned before, we provide this set of questions for participants to think about in advance because they're kind of template questions that are used in everyone's small step conversation. And they're, the questions and the sequence of those questions is very much by design. I mentioned we started piloting this program in 2017. We've been listening and fine tuning how the set of resources and the sequence of topics that people engage with when they're recording these conversations to set them up to make sure that ice breaking happens and that it can happen kind of in a fruitful and pretty efficient way. So for example, I'm sure we probably listened to some of these already in the event, but participants always begin their conversation by talking about, why did you want to do this today? That's by design. It gives them a chance to say, hey, if we both agree on one thing, we wanted to be here today. Tell me a little bit about your reasoning and my reasoning, right? Then they read each other's bios and ask a follow-up question about the bios. So activating that curiosity and just talking about a topic that their partner has already volunteered in written information. So, everything is kind of on the table for them to discuss and they can demonstrate some curiosity. Then they talk about who's been an influential person or a few influential people in your lives. That gives them a chance to honor and paint a picture of someone that really matters to them. So all of that can really serve to help folks get to know one another. So they're not immediately jumping into a discussion about politics, but rather just kind of feeling each other out as human beings and connecting on other aspects of their lives.
Yeah, it's really set up very intentionally so it doesn't turn into a debate, which I think whenever we're, scheduling people and vetting people, they're like, wait, are we allowed to talk about politics or not? And it's always kind of this question of, do I or don't I? What do you think is kind of like the singular takeaway as far as like talking about politics in these conversations if people, haven't done one and what they can expect to hear?
Sure. It's so interesting. I mean, I would say first and foremost, if you take nothing else away about how politics relates to this, the rule of thumb is you're not there to debate politics and you don't have to talk about it really at all if you don't want to. There's no pressure. And when we say talk politics, that even to the extent that conversations can get into politics, it doesn't need to be about stating a position that you have and then defending it with facts, figures, or even personal experience. Rather, you can simply talk about the role that politics is playing in your life right now, the ways in which you feel frustrated or misunderstood, how it's impacting your sense of identity or impacting your relationships with people. We all have a relationship with politics that goes beyond this is what I do and don't stand for, but how the phenomenon of politics is affecting our lives and how we'd like to see that change. And so I think it's important to note this is really an opportunity for you to reflect on how those dynamics are at play in your life and shed a little light on them to folks that you wish understood you better or that you wish to understand better, ideally both. So it's much more nuanced than just this is what I believe and this is what I don't believe. And there's zero pressure to articulate that. And there's even less pressure than that to have to defend any position that you hold. It's really just about connecting and understanding one another and the lives that you're living all the way up through the environment we're in today.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully we learned some tools from Jacqueline. So Matt, I want to move now to showcase like what a finished piece from one of these conversations sound like, meaning it's been through edits, it's gone through the production process, and it's one that you facilitated between John and Olive. So what led to this pairing?
Yeah. They both signed up and we kind of talked to them beforehand before we try and make any final pairings. And, Olive is a trans woman in Oklahoma City, and I paired her with John, who is from Stillwater, and John's probably not to age him, but maybe twice her age. They live in very kind of different places. John has kids that are just a little bit younger than Olive. So there were similarities and differences. One major similarity, though, was in the last couple of years, both of them kind of felt like outcasts from the two major political parties. They didn't feel like they necessarily fit in. So they kind of talked a lot about their differences on fiscal policies and how they kind of were feeling left out in politics. But when we got around to finding a portion of the conversation for you guys to listen to, this exchange just kind of stuck out to us, right?
Yeah, this was really just like even when it happened. So, we've talked about how at the beginning of a conversation, before it even starts, you start with the ground rules. Whenever the conversation's actually being recorded, you do your introductions, say who you are, where you're recording from. Then you say why what made you want to do the conversation. And then the second question is, you read the bio, and then that's your chance to ask any follow-ups you have about it to get to know this person. And the clip that we're going to play is the first question after reading Olive's bio that John had for her. So, yeah, it was beautiful
So
whenever
there's
it happened too. So hopefully you guys get something out of it too.
So I do have a question for you as far as coming out as trans and the fear. What are you afraid of?
I think a lot of it is that me and my community are kind of becoming a primary target. There's like 1 year, I think it's like 2014, 2015, that they called a transgender tipping point. At the same time, you get the increased visibility and the increased awareness, but also with that comes a lot more people who didn't know about trans people before knowing about them and being very scared. So I've been very lucky that I haven't had too much problems, but that's definitely, a fear that I'm just trying to pee. And then because, everyone and their sister has a gun in Oklahoma, that someone might hurt me. So that's scary but at the same time, I'm very happy that I did it. And it does bring me a lot of joy.
It kind of makes me sad that you have to be afraid. I mean, I think about it in terms of my own kids. I would want them to know that no matter what lifestyle they chose or what life they chose or how they felt about things, that they were loved and supported by me, no matter what.
Yeah, I know for a little bit, me and my parents kind of were butting heads about it until recently. It's not really something you do choose. The choice that you make is either doing it and surviving or spending your entire life I don't know. The more I lived with it, the shorter my life I was worried would become.
Well, I'm glad you decided to take charge and go the way you wanted to.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. So as much fun as you can have, I guess. I don't know. Just trying to be myself.
Well, hopefully, you won't be afraid one of these days.
Yeah. So, what did you think when you first heard it in the moment?
Yeah, first hearing that clip, I know there was like a discussion whether or not we were going to put music with it because we were kind of like, does it need it? And a lot of the times I feel like the work we've done together, just like before this project, we've just used music as kind of transitional. But it was during the production process, I think that was one thing that we were talking about, like, do we include music or not? Because I don't know. But no, I just think, I think knowing that this was his first question out of the gate is like a really brave thing. Cause to ask somebody like why you're scared of something, I think is just like a really powerful question and also honest because he was really curious about it, So I just think it was a brave thing to do. And I think the way that Olive, talked about it was also a really brave thing. So I think they both did a really good job here. Like both listening, asking and listening, I think. So
Yeah, I think both of them were just really open with one another.
Yeah.
I also had a chance to talk to John a couple weeks after this to just catch up and see what he felt after. What was your experience doing One Small Step like?
I thought it was fantastic. I found basically that I actually do have hope that people with differing points of view can talk to each other and not turn it into, contempt and all of that stuff that you hear on the news these days.
What was kind of the biggest challenge during the conversation for you?
Probably that I wanted to talk more than we got to, because there's lots of subjects I wanted to delve into in more detail.
What was the kind of takeaway you left with?
Probably that I think that this is important and that we should do it more. I think the one takeaway, and I guess it's not so much a takeaway as maybe a concern, is that I wonder if people who really need to talk to each other aren't signing up to do this. Because there's a certain audience with NPR and maybe the people who signed up in the first place are definitely more willing to talk anyway. I think that there's a lot of people out there who probably need to talk and aren't talking to each other.
What would you say to maybe some of those people to convince them to maybe do this kind of experience?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think that everybody needs to think about the fact that you don't have to hate someone just because you have a different opinion with them. And we should definitely start from that perspective and not just let the news media or social media determine how we feel about someone that we don't even know because we haven't tried to get to know.
Yeah. Before this conversation, what was your kind of attitude about the goal of this project and just kind of the state of political divisiveness in this country right now?
Oh, I think that I was so happy to hear about the project. I was so happy to participate because I think that the political divisiveness right now is just really killing us, and it's not necessary. Like I said, we can disagree on things. We can disagree on maybe how to achieve the goals, but I think most people have similar goals in life, and we just differ on how to get there.
Did you feel like you were like making a difference by doing one of these conversations?
Yeah, I think so. I think it helped to promote understanding between two different people, and that definitely makes a difference.
Do you think you would have maybe talked to a person like Olive, like outside of this situation?
I think that I wouldn't have encountered a person like Olive necessarily. If I had, I would have talked to them in any situation, but I think maybe having the opportunity to have a one-on-one direct introduction with someone like Olive was something that would be missing in my day-to-day life. I think maybe that's maybe one of the things that's most difficult is if you run in certain circles, you don't necessarily encounter people outside those circles. Yeah, you guys broadened my circle, and that's what I had hoped for.
Yeah. So you had talked to me before this event where you said whenever you were interviewing him, how he wanted to talk to Olive again. Whenever you were, remember you told me that?
Yeah. It's been brought up quite a few times about just like, 50 minutes, it feels surprisingly short in the moment. It kind of just goes like that.
It really does. We have people all the time. They're like, that was fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But no, I think what's been really exciting about this project, at least from the stuff that we can see, like the spreadsheets and signups and everything, is how politically diverse Oklahomans are. Like we've been really blessed. We've had so many political affiliations sign up, whether it's, you're obviously Republican or Democrat, but we've had libertarians sign up, independents, no party affiliations. So it's like, it's been actually really, really cool to see how Oklahomans are, that want to do this. So I think that's been really awesome. And so one thing that I want to bring up for everybody before we go into our last clip with Jacqueline that talks about, commonalities, regardless of where these conversations happen, and also tools that you can use if you want to do these, maybe going into Thanksgiving, maybe you want to try one, is that, we've done 14 of these. We have 11 more to go. So if you're interested in talking to a stranger, please sign up now. Where you go to do that is kosu.org/one-small-step, and I'll put it, we'll put it in the chat for everybody.
yeah, I think there are a few messages throughout the night, but we'll make sure that you guys get it like one more time.
Yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Yeah, so we have one more clip with Jacqueline, and it just talks about the tools that you can use if you want to do conversations like these.
So you've probably heard more of these conversations than anybody else. And, you mentioned like the cohort of our station being just one of like, multiple in the country. And this is the second year that you guys have done this. Is there anything in common that you've heard that has been demonstrated, between all the participants, kind of regardless of where they come from and their background?
Thank you for that question, Matt. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there is a theme that extends throughout everyone's conversations, which is we are all better than this. And there are forces at work making us feel angry and frustrated and particularly kind of grumpy or, acrimonious toward one another. And those forces are kind of like by design, and we need to rise above them, right? For example, people say, social media or just the media in general, like news it's all sort of out there in a way that activates our sense of like fight or flight and frustration. And we know from on a day-to-day level, on a human-to-human level, that there's so much more that we have in common, our goals, the ways that we want to live our lives, just the ways that we want to be respected, the way that we want to take care of our kids. Those are fundamental to everybody. And, the particularities of it might vary, but everybody can understand that. And I think people over and over again say, it's these one-on-one interactions that remind us that like, there's this small part of us that's different than one another, but there's so much more that's just sort of less charged and intense, but foundational, that we have in common. And we need to move away from the forces that want to pull us into the angry place and over to that foundation of steadiness, that we can stand on together. And I will say as well, one of the great joys of this program too, I mean, I think it's totally right on, Matt, to be curious about what the commonality is among all these conversations, regardless of where they're happening is. But what I love about this communities program, where we get to really set up shop in collaboration with our public media partners in different parts of the country over a sustained period of time, is that it really showcases how people, even on a regional level, can have this really strong and beautiful common identity, right? I know we've already heard it in the conversations that you've shared tonight. It's an Oklahoman thing, right? What does it mean to be an Oklahoman, to be part of this community? And you hear iterations of that everywhere. What does it mean to be an Alaskan? What does it mean to be a Vermonter? What does it mean to be someone of the High Plains? And the iterations of what it means are different, right? There are some core values connecting everybody, but that regional pride and that invitation for folks to remember we're Oklahomans first before we are red and blue, I think is also like a really, really beautiful thread that you can see weaving through this project that we're doing together. And I just wanted to shout that out.
Yeah. Well, do you have any questions, Kaylee?
Yeah, I'd like to know if there's tools that people can use if they're feeling excited about this, and like maybe they want to try it out on a friend first before they move to a stranger. What's something that they can do?
Yeah, totally. So, it's funny. Some folks feel like it's safer or easier to talk to folks in their own life first, and other folks feel like it'd be easier to talk to a stranger. So we're really excited to be able to offer resources to do both. If you're not participating, you haven't had the chance to participate through KOSU yet to talk to a stranger, we do have a DIY One Small Step Conversation guide that KOSU is going to be sharing out with folks. It's also on the StoryCorps website. And it's a really cool resource. On the technical side, StoryCorps has like a mobile app, and we also have sort of an unfacilitated space where you can go on. It's kind of like a Zoom platform, and you can have a virtual conversation with someone. You just sort of set it up following the instructions, and it's recorded. And with your permission, you can actually have that sort of Zoom recording archived at the Library of Congress along with the rest of our collection. But the guide, in addition to all those technical instructions, it also has sort of step-by-step instructions about how to have a one small step conversation yourself, tips and tricks, all those suggested questions, how to prepare, and all those other fun tips like how to set yourselves up for success through, the right lighting and private spaces and turning off cell phones and thinking about the questions you want to explore together in advance. So absolutely check out the DIY guide. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to hear your conversations added to the archive when you have them.
All right. I think Matt put the link to the guide that she was talking about into the chat. So feel free to copy that link in there. But yeah, so now we're open for questions, open for the Q&As. So if you guys have any questions about participating, how the project's been, anything like that, please feel free to ask in the chat. We are here. And yeah, just so you know, here's some crediting. So that's what this is. StoryCorps' One Small Step Communities is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And then here's some of the other supporters as well. And I will turn on some music to maybe inspire some questions as well. I haven't had a chance to check out the chat, so I apologize. Can you participate if you only have a smartphone? People have, yes. Yeah, you can. It can be a little difficult if you do it online, just because the platform is very similar to Zoom. But if you're really interested in it, I would still encourage you to sign up for sure.
Yeah. So
I'm looking at the questions as they're coming in. Sorry, guys. Oh, I was gonna play music.
yeah. I'll read off this one. So Shelly asks, how do I see my conversation that was recorded? So after your conversation is recorded, it has to be archived by one of us, and then after that, it takes a couple weeks to process that. And once they finish all the paperwork, basically, you should get a recording, I think, in your email.
If it's the Shelly that I think you are, I remember in the archive you're still pending for the archivist. So yeah, keep a lookout on your email though. I think they let you know through your email.
Yeah, if you're one of the participants, you should have our contact info. So we'll reach back out, or you can reach us if you have any other worries. So John asked, has any conversation ever become uncomfortable?
No, I guess not that we've heard from participants. I think there's been moments where it's like they venture into a topic that as facilitators we're watching like, oh no, is this the moment that it's going to turn into a debate? And it just hasn't. Like, I feel like whenever people sign up for this, it's with intention, I think, to really just like listen actively. But no, I can't think of, out of the 14 we've done, it's never really turned into a debate or anything.
It's never gotten, like, tense. I mean, it's about as uncomfortable as like two strangers meeting at a party, talking to each other has gotten uncomfortable. Just,
Yeah.
small talk and stuff. Yeah.
Let's see. There's a question from Allie. What are some ways for someone who has a severe traumatic brain injury to help create conversations about the issues we face and that they are important? I think by like talking to people that don't know about them. One thing that I think was really cool about Kelly and Carol's conversation is that they talked about, whether they knew someone who had a disability in their lives and like how that impacted their relationships versus having a disability themselves. And just like having that discussion, I think just opened it up to just learn about it. So I think just even talking to a stranger who doesn't know anything about that is like one way you could do that.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't know if we missed any from earlier.
yeah. I'm trying to see if I can read the full name. I think it says Deborah. Deborah asks, how shall we continue our great work with one small step? So just this project is set to end at the end of the year for us, at least. But keep your eyes out on the horizon because KOSU collaborates with StoryCorps pretty frequently. Before this, I think it was, correct me if the year is wrong. I think it was like 2018 or something, 2017, when the StoryCorps mobile booth came to Oklahoma City, right?
Yeah. So definitely keep like an eye out on kosu.org because they may or may not be continuing One Small Step here in Oklahoma. So keep a lookout next year. And I think that's it. Oh yeah, Rachel says 2018. If you haven't signed up, just jump in. You won't regret it, I promise. Carol, I think Carol's here. Carol, you're the best. And thanks to all like the people who joined tonight. That that means a lot that you guys like took the time out of your evening to hear what this project has been like for Matt and I. It means a lot that you did that.
Yeah, if you know anybody who'd be interested in listening to this, we're planning on saving this recording and putting it up, where videos live on the internet.
Yeah, I think we're gonna put it on our YouTube channel so like people who couldn't make it tonight can watch it. And also, I think that Matt and I are gonna be figuring out when exactly we want to air these pieces on KOSU. So also keep an ear to the airwaves as well.
Yeah, this for sure won't be the last time you'll hear any of the things you heard tonight.
Yeah, it's just a chance to hear them exclusively. So thank you to everybody who joined, and we will see you on the air.
Thanks, guys. Bye.